Alright, let's talk about this kind of nuclear ban list that happened very recently, with part of the nuclear effect being that there are no changes for standard. We'll go into more detail about that in a bit. I'll go through the entirety of the list and then we'll sort of talk about it one at a time, sort of. So, the vast majority, or I should say all of these hits, are only going to be for the premium format. And a lot of these are going to be kind of around the same vein. So they decided to choice restrict pretty much every single crest getter, grade 1 crest getter, with its history collection grade 3 version for the most part, right? So we have here the one for Luard, so you can't use both of these cards in the same deck. It's choice restrict, you can only use one or the other. Whereas the Revenant's Rust Dragon here has been completely restricted to 0 copies. So these are both for the entirety of Keter Sanctuary. Here, this is for the entirety of Dragon Empire. Same thing, can't use the Shiranui and the Crest Getter for Shiranui in the same deck. Same thing for Brankgate, can't use the Crest Getter for Messiah and Messiah in the same deck. Same thing for Dark States. In all of Dark States, you can't use the Crest Getter for Chronojet and Chronojet in the same deck. And you can't use the Crest Getter for Harry and Harry in the same deck. And finally, same thing for Stir Camp. You can't use the Crest Setter for Night Rose and Night Rose in the same deck. And they've also completely restricted for all of Stoicheia the Sea Strike, Dragon, and Larger Gulf. Can't use that in any of those decks. For the clan-specific hits, they've completely restricted the Dreaming Dragon and the Witch of Frogs Melissa for Genesis, while reducing the Shackle Fetter Gelja, I never knew how to say that guy's name. He's limited now to 1. For Nubatama, they've completely restricted both the Mizukaze and the Sukumarokan. Completely restricted those. For Dark Irregulars, they've hit Hope on Damp and Baron's Hardleg. For Gear Chronicle, they have again hit a choice restriction of Mesogear and Steam Maiden Melem. So for Gear Chronicle specifically, you can only play either the Crest Getter or Chronojet, and the Crest Gator or Melem, right? Then for Mega Colony, they put Ghidorah to 1. For Near Nectar, they put Katrina to 1. And for Grand Blue, there's a choice restriction between Beatrice and Necrolily. You can only play one or the other. So, with all that said, what does this all mean? I'll start with the standard part, since this is a mainly standard focused channel. There were 0 changes for standard, which is ironic because on the Japanese side, that was like a really big ban list. For the standard side, nothing for premium, where we had the exact opposite in English, which kind of makes sense. Japan doesn't really have major tournaments for premium, whereas on the English side, we play premium a lot more and we have a lot more major events for it. In the Japanese side, we've got this following hit where they put Value Lord to 1. They choice restricted the original Raziel and Saragon, so you can only play one or the other. They put Charmette to 2, and then they reduced the restriction on Stegna and Izazao to 2 copies. They were originally set to 1. Going into this, when they revealed the English ban list was coming soon, or the deck construction rules, which was kind of worded interestingly, but I guess that just means ban list now. They just changed the verbiage. What they've done is, or what people thought was going to happen, is they were going to copy this specifically. They thought maybe they would do something for premium, but people expected just this was coming because it was announced right after the Japanese one was announced. I personally expected these changes to come, and I did not expect Value Lord to come at all. But we didn't get any of those changes, which is kind of interesting. So we can actually take a look at why these changes didn't come, specifically why there was no hit to Leverage Dress and Raziel, based on what Bushiroad said. So if we hop over here, we can see they fucked up and they put this as August 2024 when it should say March 2025, but this is the right page, so you know. And essentially what they've said here is that since the release of set 5, they've been keeping an eye on for Raziel and Leverage Dress, given that they got new forms. And they've also been keeping track of Eglima. These are basically the 3 decks that are on the watch list, right? Where if they top too much, they get shot. But they concluded that essentially, to summarize here, is that both Raziel and Leverdress did not top as much, even though Leverdress was the most used throughout the BCS 24-25 regional qualifier tournaments. Raziel was the most used deck, according to this. I don't know if they mean overall, just of the 3 that they're taking a look at. This makes it seem like it was the most used overall. But even then, it did not have a particularly high win rate. I don't know if this means they didn't get first place. I don't know if they mean 4th place, top 4, top 8, top 16, top 32, best out of Swiss. I don't know what they qualify as best win rate per se, but they're just saying it just wasn't enough to meet their threshold to have the deck get hit. They kind of said the exact same thing with Leverdress, with it being the 2nd most used deck, but they also said here that they're considering upcoming releases. I don't know what this means. We know Leverdress gets support in set 7. That actually makes the deck better. So I don't know if they think like, okay, once it gets that, then we can hit it. Or if they're saying, okay, we're releasing other decks in set 7 that'll keep this deck in check. Maybe we won't have to hit it. I don't know what they mean, but if you just look at the Japanese side, I'm assuming they mean once they get the new card, we can then hit Charmant to then, balance out the power level. For Egg Lima, they basically said that, ironically, they said that the usage rate was just overall low, nothing about the win rate, because I've actually been the one that's been saying that this deck, while people want it hit, just hasn't been winning enough, I think, for it to actually be warranting a hit. But they're also saying that people just aren't using it enough, which I think is kind of interesting, and it's, I think, pretty accurate. For B Premium, there's no major tournaments for V, so they have nothing to say. And for Premium, they just said that the hits are all based on the BCSs. Nothing specific. They just said all of these decks did way too well, so they just hit everything. So what does that mean for us over in Standard World? So it means maybe 2 things. First of all, we can maybe confirm that Bushiroad will not hit a product, or hit a deck, I should say, before product is released. And that kind of makes sense for 2 reasons. One, the English format tends to be kind of different from the Japanese format. Ironically, sometimes it's copy and paste. Sometimes that's not the case. Typically, we see a lot more decks being played versus what's over in Japan. And also, we have a lot of decks that are missing, specifically the collaborations, right? We always get those either late or we don't get them at all. The prime example being for this format being we don't have the Love and Berry collab. Both decks did, Love and Berry did especially well during the set 5 format when they were released. Berry now is doing really well currently in the set 7 format even, right? Well, relatively compared to Buff Saga existing. So that might be why things are a bit different in the English side, where Leverdress was a lot more popular, possibly because, Love and Berry went there to keep it in check, and Raziel wasn't as popular. Who knows? So that might be part of the reason why we haven't gotten these hits, but I think the real reason is that they're just not going to hit Buff Saga before set 7 comes out, because then nobody's going to buy set 7. Simple as that. The other thing is, regarding the other hits, right? So this one, excluding this one, the fact that we didn't get these just kind of says that we're going to continue on the same schedule that we are. So what I mean by that is that this ban list for Japan was released before set 8 was releasing. Set 8 comes out, I think, like the 11th or something of April. So I can expect this list to come into effect like the 1st of June before set 8 releases. This same exact list verbatim. I think is what's going to happen for Standard. I think they're just going to copy and paste it, but they're going to copy and paste it in the, same allotted amount of time. They're not going to do it early. And I think that's just how things are going to be. So we'll see what happens then. Right now, of course, the concern is that going into Worlds, because set 7 releases a week before Worlds, so it is legal for Worlds. It is just going to be Buff Saga everywhere. That's a concern for everyone. And that Worlds is going to be kind of a shit show because of that. And it's going to be, some mismatch of like just Buff Saga and then maybe bad or something like that, right? But who knows? We'll see, I guess. But this is looking like the format for Worlds, essentially, since we're not going to have this list. And then we'll probably, they'll probably let the shit show happen and be like, oh, okay, because of that, we'll do it or whatever, but instead of doing it preemptively. So I guess a knock on Bushiroad's part. I don't know if we really needed to hit Basaga before it comes out, but I understand both hitting it before it comes out and not hitting it before it comes out, if that makes sense. Then I'll loosely touch on the premium changes. I don't play premium enough to talk about it, but I can at least explain some few things really quickly, at least the things that relate to standard. So like I mentioned, this is the Luard hit here is a choice restriction, so you can only play one or the other between the knives from standard that lets you get the crests, right? These choice restrictions are all because of the fact that you could get a crest in premium, which means the same thing as it does at standard. You get the crest every time something is face up in your G zone. For each one of those, your front row gets 5k. You can use that in combination with the History Collection Stride, which basically says in your main phase, you can stride a unit even if your opponent's on grade 2, right? So both of those things in combination ended up being really, strong and not great for the format. So I decided to hit that, but keep them both in the format. So right now, essentially what these hits are doing is saying that you can either play the crest or you can play the History Collection stuff, not both of them. Is more or less, right, to sum it up. Again, not a premium expert, and I'm sure 50 videos have come out explaining this in better detail by better premium players than me, but just giving you a rough breakdown. Then we have the Revenant's Rush Dragon, which maybe doesn't make any sense because it's a common from set 8, but it's because in premium they have grade 3 heal triggers. So this is something that we don't have in standard, which is why Revenant's Runs doesn't really matter. But since they have grade 3 heal triggers, Revenant's Runs says that on plays you can Soul Blast 1, put a grade 2 or greater cards from your drop on top of your deck. So that kind of says enough. There's more to it than that, but I'm just sort of giving you the rough generalization of why that got hit. This one is in, same thing as the Luard one, same thing as Luard, right? These are all the same sort of type of hit, same type of hit. Same thing for Night Rose. The Enlargarv is a different one because it's unfortunately hits All-Star Chaos, so they can no longer use this card, which I really like the design of this card to an extent because it's a card that supported both formats. It supported premium and standard, and it also supported within standard different decks, right? It supported stride decks and grade 4 decks, which I thought was really cool that it was a multi-purpose card that worked really well. As much as people hate those types of cards because they're expensive, but I don't think that shitty pull rates should really harm the card design specifically. But the reason why this got restricted is that it's effect here, where basically if you're on stride, so you have a grade 3, you can play this Soul Blast 1, choose a grade 2 or greater card from your drop, add it to your hand. So this can, let you do a lot of different things. For example, you can add back those heal triggers those grade 3 heal triggers that I was saying before, which you can then use to use for heal guard. You can do a bunch of different shenanigans with this, right? The other hits don't have anything to do with standard, but I'll touch on them a little bit briefly to the best of my knowledge. So Dreaming Dragon here is a stand trigger. There are no stand triggers in the standard format. Instead, those got replaced with fronts. Stand triggers do exactly what you think they do. When you check them, they let you stand one of your units. This one specifically says something around the lines where, like, at the end of the turn, you take basically all of your cards, including this card, all of your cards in your drop and this card that's on field, put it back into your deck and shuffle your deck, essentially. So it's like Fiber Draw, right? To use a Yu-Gi-Oh reference. Then Witcher Frog's Melissa here was hit because it was in the deck that we actually briefly talked about when it won Worlds last year for premium. Excuse me, but this just says on plays from hand, you Soul Blast 1, your opponent looks at the same number of cards from the top of their deck as the number of their rear guards, and then they call them out to rear guard circles. So it basically just wipes out their whole board. So if they set up this crazy board, it just makes them call a bunch of nonsense, which can disrupt them and also make them deck out, right? And we saw that in the World format. This guy, I won't go into him because I get super specific. Like I generally know what he does, but I don't want to embarrass myself too much here. These two guys, just reading them, you can probably understand why they got hit and they're really strong. Because this one says on stride, you CB2, your opponent binds 4 of their cards face down from their hand. So really hard to guard if you don't have 4 of those cards in your hand. And this guy says that on play Soul Blast a grade 3, and then for the rest of the turn, when your opponent guards with a card, they can't guard with the same grade as that card again. So if I guard with grade 1, I can't use a grade 1 for the rest of the turn, right? Which is, both of these sound insanely ridiculous, let alone the fact that they're new with Tama with Shiranui, right? Hope on Damp, unfortunately, and Variance Hardleg also got hit, which affects me specifically, because this is the only deck that I actually played in Premium, aside from Victor. But that's because Barrow is playable in this deck, and now it is probably not. Maybe it is, because I think Barrow has a Garter Strike, but it's nowhere near as strong as this stuff, right? So, Variance Hardleg was interesting. It was actually limited to 1 already. Now it's completely gone. He was also gone in V Premium, I think, right? But he says basically, when this is placed, if you in your soul have 3 different cards with 3 different names, and you have 3 copies of those 3 cards, right? So you have 9 cards total. 3 of them share the same name, or among them, you have 3 copies of the same card, essentially. For the rest of your turn, when your opponent would call cards from hand, they have to guard with 3 or more cards. Then, Hope on Damp says, when placed, if you have 20 or more cards in your soul, if your opponent is to try and guard for the rest of the turn, they have to call cards whose original shield is 20,000 or more. So the both of these means, essentially, your opponent just can't guard, right? Which I think is cool and base for Dark Irregulars, but whatever. Some other people have some other bad, incorrect opinions, but that is just the world that we have to live in. This one I don't really know, to be honest. This one I have no experience with or anything that I can say, unfortunately. Sorry about that. Ghidorah, again, this is one of those ones where you can kind of read and you kind of get it, but it just says you counterblast, G-flip, and then your opponent just can't stand any of their units in the stand phase, and they also can't call anything except from their hand. That, even in standard terms, you can understand why that's kind of strong. And then Katrina is also another one that you read it and you kind of understand it, because it says when this is placed, you call plant tokens to your entire board, essentially, and then they all get 10k power. Then when it attacks, you, from your entire deck, you just call units equal to as many plant tokens as you have. So it gives your full board twice the second time using deck thinning from anything from your deck. So pretty strong. This one requires a little bit more explanation because we don't have these in standard. Why is that white? Ooh. There we go. We don't have these in standard. We have strides, but we don't have G-guards, which are kind of the same thing, except they're used defensively. Whereas strides, you go into on your turn and you attack with them. G-guard you use on your opponent's turn and you use those to guard, right? Which is something that people have been clamoring for to come into standard because it expands the defensive options that you have. This one specifically says that it allows you to call out a card that has Ghosty in its name from drop, which allows you to call this girl, who is Ghosty Leader Beatrice, who then she says on place you can Soul Blast 1 to call something from your drop, which then allowed you to call out another card, which allowed you to on place retire something. So you can see why that maybe got hit, because you know you could just on your turn retire something that your opponent has, right? And then that's that. Those are all the premium hits, loosely explained, and my thoughts on the lack of standard, I guess, hits overall. Yeah. I expect to see this same exact list come June, or come into effect either June 1st or July 1st. One of those two. I think it's going to be June 1st. But we'll see what happens. I think we should have an English presentation, which will probably line up in June. And that's when they'll explain this. Once they line up, once they figure out what they're going to do with the Braven collab and the Buddy Fight collab, and they figure out what collab is going to be in sets. It should be after set 7. So once they figure out what collab is going to be in set 8 and 9, then we'll have the English presentation, I think. We'll see. But in any case, let me know what you thought about the ban list or the lack of standard ban list in the comments down below. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other, play Vanguard, and have yourselves a damn good one.